Thank you everyone for coming today to the Personalized Learning Center's first Disability Career Panel. I'm really excited to have some amazing participants with us today as a panel to talk about what disability looks like within the career setting. So we have a list of questions that I'm going to read through to begin with, and then we're going to open it up to the floor to ask any additional questions that you may have. First off, I'd like to just take the chance to thank everyone for coming today, our panelists as well as you. I know it's busy, we're coming to the end of the semester and it's chaotic for a lot of us, so I appreciate you taking the time. We are also going to be video recording this so that way we can caption it as well and host it on our website. So then I will make sure that all of you get access to it to be able to share it with your colleagues and share it with anyone that you think might be comfortable with watching it. So first off, I would like to just start by, if you could tell us your name, your career, your position, your title, and kind of what brought you to this field that you're in. Amanda, do you want to start for us?
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Amanda Bell. I'm the Assistant Director of the Personalized Learning Center here at Marion. So I do all of the student-facing accommodations. And how I got into this field, I am disabled. I have a visible disability, and I quickly learned as I started to navigate employment that the best way for me to get opportunities was basically to lean into my disability and use that as an asset instead of a deficit. So I really started to look at disability as an avenue for employment and a way to support other people that were like me.
Hello, my name is Paige Osika. I use she, they pronouns. I work at an organization called Accessibility, and I'll probably talk more about it through this, but I'm the Community Engagement and Education Coordinator there, so I network with other organizations and ensure they know about our services, as well as educate the community with disability justice trainings and different intersections within the disability community. How I got into it. I kind of fell into disability justice. I've always been passionate about speaking up and advocating for marginalized communities, and through networking in college, I found accessibility and really got my career started there.
Hi, I'm Kim Harvey, and I'm an employment consultant with Best Buddies Indiana, and I've been doing this. I got to open our jobs program back in 2016. Before that, I was on the advisory boards, served as a friendship walk chair, advisory board chair, so very involved with Best Buddies for about 20 years total now. And through that, having been invited by a friend of mine from church who happens to have Down syndrome, and she's like, I'm involved in this great organization, I'm giving a speech at a gala, will you come see me and support me? So I did. I fell in love, and the organization changed my life. Best Buddies is the largest international organization for supporting inclusion for people with disabilities. And we are in over 50 countries worldwide, as well as all throughout the United States.
Hi, I am Suzanne McVeigh. I work for a nonprofit called Easter Seals Crossroads. I worked in the employment division there for about 15 years total. For the last 7 years, I came back to the organization to work with college students who are on the autism spectrum. We operate an internship program with about 9 colleges who are included now, and we help the students on the spectrum find internships within their field of study. So I've been in the field for about 20 years now. I went to school for social work, and I enjoy it. I like working with people with disabilities.
Good afternoon, my name is Larry Marple, and I'm the director of the Gregory S. Ferrybox Center. We're headquartered across the river at Eskenazi Health, and what the Ferrybox Center does is we facilitate paid internships for college students with mobility, visual, and hearing disabilities. We recruit students from all across Indiana, and even at some colleges and universities and states contiguous to Indiana as well, and place interns at Eskenazi Health, Eli Lilly, Cummins, the Pacers, etc., a variety of different places. Prior to that, I directed the disability program at Ball State University for many years. I was there 18 years, and how I got interested in working with disabled students, 100 years ago when I was an undergrad, I had to withdraw from a university, a much larger university that wasn't terribly accessible. I was using a cane to get around, and it wasn't a good experience, so I became very interested in the experiences of students with disabilities as a result.
Thank you all. So one of the common questions that we get from students is how do they talk in interviews and find out more from employers about what accessibility looks like there? So I'm interested if you could talk about what are some good questions you would suggest to students to ask during the interview or recruitment process to learn about accessibility and inclusivity within the workplace. And anyone can start that up for us.
I'll start. I think the first thing I would recommend is doing a real deep dive of the organization's website. Is there information about where folks with disabilities should go if they need an accommodation? Is there an employee resource group for disabled employees? What kind of information is there on the website about disability? A second thing I would consider is most organizations, especially large organizations, are going to reference their DEI activities and initiatives. Do they include the A in that? The more progressive organizations are diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. If I saw that an employer had that A in there, that would tell me that that's a pretty progressive place that's thinking about disabled employees as part of their broader diversity efforts.
Working in employment, we both know that there's vocational rehabilitation also, which can be assistance for people with disabilities. You could go the vocational rehabilitation route. Our organization also has what's called adaptive technology. So if those are things that could be helpful for accommodations in a workplace setting, that's also a resource that could be used.
And then I'm going to recommend taking another step to that Googling before you get to that interview, besides looking up the company, is I will put in the company name and accessibility, or the company name and accommodations, because you will see the good, the bad, and the ugly that will appear, whether it's on Glassdoor or many other cases. In one instance, I had someone worked for a company, and I felt he was being treated very poorly and singled out for disability. So I looked up and found out that there were 3 major lawsuits against that company on disability, horrible, horrible practices. And our best decision was to get him out of that company as quickly as possible, because we knew no matter what kind of sunshine they were telling me when I would meet with supervisors, that that's not what the reality was. The reality was what he was experiencing on the floor every day. So go with where they tell you to look, because everyone makes their website look really inclusive and there, but engage and dig a little bit deeper beyond that. And the other thing that I don't shy away from point blank of who manages your accommodations that your employees need. And if the person from HR has no clue, that's going to be a big red flag. The best companies will say, oh, well, we have a whole department, this person chairs it, this person does this. Whatever those cases are, when they know who provides that information, then that is a big, a key to me that you have a company that's a little more alert and is going to be a good employer for you.
I am a fairly recent college graduate, so I am new to the employment force, and it is scary and tricky to navigate. And figuring out a lot of this information can be overwhelming, but almost everyone here on the panel works for organizations that can help with that placement and help figure it out with you. You do not have to do it alone. My organization even has resources on reasonable accommodations for both like empowering people with disabilities as well as kind of encouraging and educating the organization they may be going to. So my biggest piece of advice is use your resources and utilize us here, because you don't have to figure out every single aspect by yourself.
I will also say there's some signs that'll tell you in advance if it's going to be a good fit for accessibility. One thing a lot of people don't think about, for a lot of disabled people, if the application itself isn't very accessible, so you can't use a screen reader or other assistive technology, that's already a pretty good sign of where the corporation or organization you're applying for is situated related to accessibility. And then also use your network of support group and friends. So if you have somebody that works there or somebody that knows somebody, ask them because they will also be able to speak to how they support other populations and whatnot. And when you're in the interview situation, I would highly recommend not. If you're comfortable, that's great, but talking about things in like hypotheticals, like how do you support diverse populations, and then like mention a couple groups besides disability. If you're not comfortable, I mean, if you're comfortable, that's fine, but it's kind of like you have to figure out, because when you're outed as disabled, there's other questions that come with it. Like one thing that I had to learn when I started interview, I had inappropriate questions asked, and I had to prepare for that. So if you're not a person with a visible disability, figuring out strategies to ask those questions in a way that you're not outing yourself, so couching it among broader questions like how do you support diverse populations, families, etc. That'll tell you a lot of things without giving away your status.
Amanda, thank you for adding that, because that actually leads right into our next question. Of what advice would you provide to a job seeker or an employee who is trying to decide if they should disclose their disability identity within their career, within their workforce, within their organization?
I think a lot of that depends on the type of organization that you are applying to, the specific organization you're applying to. There are many companies that have extremely well-planned tactics to diversify their staff. They want people who have diverse backgrounds. They specifically, are looking, well, we would love to have someone with disabilities on our staff. We would love to have someone with autism on our staff. And so some of those companies can go a little overboard, but some can be extremely welcoming. I think it depends on, again, the right company. There are some companies that it's just going to be an obstacle and you're not going to get past that first glance from an HR director, and they're just going to move on to the next resume. But once you're in that interview, then that becomes, again, how much you are going to disclose. The people that I specifically have worked with, many of them have invisible disabilities, but a lot of times their executive function, their ability to answer questions and respond, will tell an interviewer that they do have a disability of some sort without saying that. So typically what I will do when working with someone, because sometimes I am an accommodation that they will use, I will go to an interview with someone or help someone with an online interview, at least make the connections in advance. So disclosing you have a disability, you do not have to disclose your very specific disability, but you can disclose you have a disability. And with my disability, I do work with a job coach who supports me. That might be enough to open that door and have that conversation. There are some employers that they've had success with working with job coaches before. They're going to love every minute of that, say this is wonderful. They're going to help you transition and get set up in your job. But in other cases, they're like, oh no, we had a horrible experience with that. I never want it again. So it is a fine line, but it's asking and using all those resources in advance and then making your best guess. But the thing is, once you do disclose, you have the power of the ADA behind you, and that's a whole nother set of advantages of that.
I would always say at first is, are you safe in this environment? And you'll know that, you'll feel that. Bias is real and is very deeply rooted in a lot of our workplaces. So if you're in a space where you are not feeling safe to disclose, that is a choice. You are not required to at all. And that comes with the privilege of invisible disabilities. Now, on the other hand, there are organizations who really want to increase that diversity effort, and then by disclosing, you can start to get more of those accommodations you may need. You'll know if you're safe or not, and if you feel like you need those accommodations, but again, don't know how to approach that conversation and outing yourself as a person with a disability, use your resources. I've figured out how to do it and navigate that a little bit. Ask me, ask other people here who have done it before. And on the other side, if you're a person who's offering a job or looking for student employees or whatever type of employees, it can be as simple as like having a, accessibility poster. You see a lot in the DEI initiative for a lot of other marginalities, but just having that accessibility poster there can open up that conversation as well. It could be as simple as that. And also incorporating through interview structures in that first week they're there and maybe even a month in, asking those questions of do you need any accommodations can open that conversation and make individuals feel safe as well.
I can add a little entertaining piece to that. I've had a couple students who had more severe autism and they absolutely had to disclose, otherwise it was going to be a very uncomfortable situation. He wasn't going to be successful. One student in particular would scream the F word at the top of his lungs in a accounting office. Not really appropriate, so we had to disclose so that he could have his own office to where he could keep the door closed, and when he got frustrated, he could go ahead and cuss away. We had another one who had a tick, who he would pick his crotch when he got nervous. So we had to disclose because it's not really cool to mess with yourself while you're at work. So we had to make other accommodations for him to have his own workspace and to be alone, and that was what was going to make those students successful in their internship.
And really good stuff so far, just maybe I'll add to it a little bit. It's a really personal decision, right, to disclose a disability and when to disclose it. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There could be times, as some of the fellow panelists have mentioned, that it's advantageous for the person to disclose the disability when the employer is very obviously looking to diversify the workplace and considers disability as part of that. But there are other times, as Paige mentioned, that bias is real and many people don't understand disability and they have negative connotations with disability. So sometimes, maybe the best advice is don't disclose the disability in the process until you have to. For somebody with an obvious apparent disability, it's going to be apparent when you go in for an interview, but maybe not on a phone interview. So do you not disclose the disability during a phone interview, but then let them know in advance when you're coming in for an interview? If it's not apparent, do you wait until an accommodation need is there to disclose the disability so as not to impact the decision to be hired? It's tricky. It really is tricky, and I wish there were a concrete, this is how you should do it, but it's really very much a personal, individualized decision that the disabled person has to make.
So I've had a mixed bag with this. When I first interviewed, I was told, don't disclose. Everybody at my university said, don't disclose, don't put anything on your applications, don't even hint that you have a disability. And I did all the mock interviews and whatnot, and I went to my first interview, and the first thing the person said to me is, how are you going to do this job in a wheelchair? And I was 19 years old, very naive, very caught off guard, didn't fully understand my rights. I had a functional or basic understanding, but not a deep understanding. And also, I was just totally thrown off guard because I didn't expect it. Because the mock interview, of course, did not cover that. So the interview went awful, and I didn't, of course, get the job. So at that point on, I basically just, what I used to do is I would do half my applications, I would disclose in my cover letter, and then half of them I wouldn't, and I would see where I got hits. Most of the time I got hits when I disclosed, which was interesting. Then during COVID, and this is kind of just mine, because I forget, Mandy pointed this out the other day, when you're doing Zoom interviews, people don't see that you're in a wheelchair, they just think you're sitting. And so I wasn't purposely not disclosing that I was disabled, it just never came up. And so I went to an interview for, ironically, a disability director job, and the person that interviewed me was very disappointed that I was in a wheelchair. And he made no qualms about it. He was very open about the fact that he was disappointed. And so, in my experience, it has been better to disclose because then if they're not gonna hire me because I'm in a wheelchair, I don't waste my time with the process, and all my cards are on the table. But for me, that's what's been effective for me. I'm not shy about my disability. I don't think anybody that ever met me will tell you that I'm shy, so it's not a covert operation. It's just, sometimes I don't think about it because for me, this is just my body. But for me, it's been effective to disclose. But again, I agree with everybody that it's a personal decision.
Just add one more thing to that. I was working with a student who had a significant hearing disability, and this was during COVID, and she was doing interviews via Zoom to get into medical school, and pretty high stress, high level interviews. And she asked me, she said, what if they say something I don't quite pick up what they're saying in the interview? And so we had a nice discussion, and she came to the determination that in this situation that she was going to own it up front, disclose the disability, something to the effect of, I want you to know, I have a hearing disability. If I ask you to repeat something, it's not that I'm not paying attention, I may have just missed it. So I think she handled that in a really nice way, and happy to report she's in year 2 of med school, doing very well. But again, everybody's a little bit different in how they're going to approach that.
And I'm going to be a broken record with this, but use your resources. Part of disability justice and building that community is interdependence, because we can't figure these things out alone. And even in your story that you were sharing, you had that conversation. You opened that, and that individual had their team they could figure it out and discuss with. So, yeah, use your resources.
Thank you. So the next accommodation is one we get, or the next question is one that we get quite often is, how do accommodations work in full-time employment? One, what do accommodations look like? And how do you ask for disability-related accommodations?
So going into it, I would think that you would know what you need. Maybe you work with a team, maybe you have a job coach working with you, but you know what's going to make you successful. Sometimes if it's a physical need, you might need adaptive technology. So we visit our friends at Easter Seals and get the right adaptive technology. Most accommodations that are needed cost the company very little money. Almost all of them are less than $500 that it would cost a company to invest in someone, and that's a really sound investment to make to have that right person in the job. Most of the things that I see with accommodations have to deal, quite frankly, with scheduling. You might have a disability that prevents you from driving your own car, so you are stuck on relying on the poor excuse of public transportation we have in Indiana, and it's awful. So you might not be able to get on a city bus and get to work until 8:20 and have all your colleagues come in at 8:15 or 8 o'clock. So you're going to ask for that, ability to do that, and can I work a little bit later, take a shorter lunch hour to make up for that time? Most employers are going to say absolutely yes, because it does not cost them any time or any money to do that. It's truly what an accommodation stands for. But I've had people that needed, I have someone who works at the prosecutor's office, and going into the office after working at home during COVID, he can't sit all day long. He has an intellectual disability, but he also has a back problem. So they have a desk, he can sit part of the day and stand up and work behind a standing desk the rest of the day. No problem, they were very happy to accommodate that. I've never had someone just point blank tell me no, but I've not been asking for some of the more costly accommodations, but I've just been very direct, very upfront. What do we need and why do we need it? And if possible, I can tell them where we can source that to make that happen. And when you go in there with the knowledge, most business owners have been pretty responsive to making adaptations. There's a company I had the pleasure of visiting recently, Accenture, went to their offices in Chicago. They're a worldwide company, and around the globe they have 15, maybe it's only 13, accessibility centers where anyone within their certain region can go to there to find the right things they need, whether it's ergonomic desks, whether it's the speak to text, whatever they need. Any employee, not just someone with a disclosed disability, any employee can go there to find accommodations that they need. Amazing.
Speaking to the, oh, no, you go. Oh, no, you're fine. I'll go ahead.
The one thing that I will say when requesting accommodations, because a lot of students are not taught how to talk about their disability as if it's not a deficit. And when requesting accommodations, it's really helpful, especially in the employment environment, to talk about your disability not from a deficit perspective and how the requested accommodation will allow you to meet the essential function of the job, because the requirement under the law is your ability to meet the essential functions of the job with or without reasonable accommodations. So if one of, like in my job, one of the essential functions is I have to do case notes and record keeping. Well, one of the things that I use to do that is dictation software, because typing is a challenging task because of fine motor. When I talk to employers, I don't say, well, I can't write very well, so I'm going to need accommodations for that. I say, I can complete all written tasks with the support of assistive technology, and I give examples, and I talk about how I navigate with those examples. So if you're coaching disabled people, or if you're a disabled person yourself, learning how to switch that language from a deficit to a asset perspective is super helpful, and then speaking to how the requested accommodation connects to your ability to fulfill those essential functions is super important, and it's also going to showcase to the employer or the person you're talking to about the accommodations how you're still able to meet those essential functions without any additional stress or strain on the organization.
I like what you just said. You lean on ability instead of disability. So you focus on what you can do, what you can complete, what you excel at, instead of looking at it negatively and the disability.
Speaking to the employment side, and going back to what I said earlier, if you open that conversation as soon as possible, it works for students and employees beyond disability. This is universal design, where if we open the conversation, it doesn't even have to be the question of, do you need an accommodation? Because sometimes that's tricky, sometimes people don't know what they need. And if you open it to what supports you need, or what parts of your job right now are challenging, is there anything I can get you to help more with X function? You can create that conversation, brainstorm together what that could look like, and it'll benefit every employee, not just employees with disabilities. Also, again, apologies, use your resources. So there's a big bias that reasonable accommodations, like you said, are very expensive. Most of them are not at all. And there's also organizations out there where if your company can't cover that cost, afford that, for example, accessibility, if you need that piece of assistive tech, we can help purchase that for you completely free to you, completely free to the organization. And Easter Seals has an amazing, we work with them all the time, but they have a library, I'll let you talk about that, where you can rent out assistive tech just to see if that is like what works for you. I'm a person with invisible disabilities, and some of the things that I have is I have one of those kneeling chairs that kind of rock, and so I get to like sitting in these chairs all the time, I will move, I will fidget, and that allows me to focus better. So little things like that, adaptive seating, fidgets, giving grace with movement during meetings are all things that speak to that universal design that includes everyone, even beyond the disability community.
Just a couple of additional points I would say is Marion students have this great resource with the office, with Mandy, Amanda, and Hannah. I hate to say that helps facilitate accommodations for disabled students. I hate to say it, but in the workforce, offices like that typically aren't, employers don't have those offices. So it's often somebody in the human resources department is the person for whom that you would go to request accommodations. That person, like someone else mentioned before, may not be an expert on disability accommodations. It may be just an add-on to that person's job description. So I would say be prepared that in the workforce, you may not get the same level, the same quality of support that you would through an office like the one here at Marion. And second, practice student employment, campus jobs, internships. Learn, experiment with the kind of accommodations that would be helpful, so you know what's best for you when you're ready to, when you graduate and ready to take on that full-time position.
Just another quick add-on, and goes to anyone here who might be hiring someone with a disability, anyone who might be hiring anyone in their future roles. It will benefit you so much, and this is, again, it's universal design, but asking any new employee, how do you learn best? How do you take in new information? What do you need to be successful? What environment do you need to be successful? Do you need to listen to music? Okay, well, we have a no music policy, but if you use one earbud only or use bone conducting headset, that will meet our safety requirements, so we know that will allow you to function better to achieve your best ability here. We want you to achieve. And if we ask all of our new employees those same questions, how do you learn? How do you like to get information? You will see a world of difference in everyone across the board, and you're not singling anyone with a disability out because you're asking everyone.
Thank you so much. The only other thing that I want to add to that is, in the same way within higher ed, where a student can ask for an accommodation at any time, an employee, potential employee, does not need to have the entire list of, I'm going to need all of these things for access, because they may not know what they need. They are going into spaces that maybe they haven't experienced before. They're going into full-time employment for the first time. So they can request accommodations at any time throughout that. And so Amanda and I talk with the students a lot about that, of what you need right now may not be what you need for your next project, what you may need for your next class, and that also extends to the employment sector. Sorry, I know I'm just a moderator, but I wanted to add that because I think it's really important. Can you talk a little bit about what you would say to someone who may be facing disability discrimination in the career or job search?
Sound like a broken record. Use your resources, but also talk to, and this might be a bit of a generalization, but most disabled people I know other disabled people. So asking them, remembering that there's federal resources like EEOC, Office of Civil Rights, tapping into those resources, talking, asking if there's a grievance process at an organization, because some companies have a grievance process. If you think something has happened, like what's that process, and understanding, is there a channel through your organization that you can work through, or do you need to go through those more formal resources like the EEOC or the OCR avenues. There are resources. It does exist. Also, understanding what your rights are in terms of like recording things in a state, because some states have one person can record or nobody can record without permission. Understanding those things can be helpful, because, and I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer, but in my experiences, people that discriminate against people with disabilities in the employment setting do it in very covert ways that can be really hard to prove. So understanding those channels and avenues can be really helpful, because if it's a situation of hearsay, it can be really hard to prove, especially if you're a new employee or you're an intern. So understanding your rights and also being aware that those things can happen can really help you manage them if you encounter them.
I work with someone who, imagine this, she had about 4'8" on a tall day, and weighs maybe 100 pounds, and she was applying for jobs as, she would do laundry at a nursing home. She was hired to do this job. She was going through her first day of training, 8 hours worth of training, and at the end of the training, and everything was fine, we discussed the one thing of the job that she could not do. There was one task she could not perform, and that was lift a 50-pound bag, bucket of laundry detergent. Couldn't do that. I can't do that either. But that was the only thing she couldn't do, and the manager said, no problem. These 3 other people can't do it either, and one of the maintenance guys will lift it if we have to move buckets. I'm like, okay, no problem. The next morning, we get a call from Human Resources and said, we are revoking our job offer. They cannot perform all of the duties of the job. And we're like, well, she's already been through training. She's already working. We're like, well, they didn't have the authorization to hire her from the company itself at the location. Their headquarters are saying no, no, no. Eventually, they did pay her for her time, which they had to do. She completely had a case that she could have gone to EEOC. And I had the privilege of meeting with EEOC and actually presenting about supported employment because they'd never heard about it, or at least not much. The office here in town, very uninformed, so I got to explain to them what does, having a job coach at work and those things, how do they support. But they are there for you, and they do want to work, and they want to find these companies that are pulling the rug out from under people once they've agreed to something, and then they say, oh, no, our bad, sorry. That was absolute discrimination and should have been dealt with. And the parents are just said, no, we'll just walk away and find another opportunity. And I get that because there is a point where you pick your own battles, and sometimes you don't have the emotional energy to go up against it, and that's what these companies want. They're the bullies, they just want you to go away. And they will bully you, and if they can get you to walk away instantly, they've done their job, they'll move on to the next person who doesn't have something. And that's a very horrible way to do business, but a lot of people, that's how they do it.
I guess I would just add document any conversations, keep a log of the conversation, so you're building the case that it's probably not something that just happens like that. It's probably a series of micro or macro aggressions that have happened. But once you sense the difficulties beginning, make sure you have a good record of that you can report if you ever have to go to EEOC and attorney, the internal grievance procedures, etc.
No, you're not alone. Know that a lot of people face this in the disability community, and you have that community behind you when these things happen. Don't stop talking about things if they sit wrong in your gut. Tell your parents, tell your friends, tell your community, and they can help discern maybe what the best path forward is for that. But you're not alone. It happens.
Thank you. What advice would you provide to employers to create a more accessible, understanding, inclusive environment?
I will start. Wow, there are so many employers that are doing it really well, and so learn from other employers. I mentioned earlier that there are some employers who've really embraced disability as part of their diversity efforts. So, learn from what those employers are doing. Host an intern with a disability. A couple folks up here that run internship programs. That may be a good way to learn a little bit more. There's all kinds of wonderful things, but I would say most importantly, just consider disability as part of the overall your diversity efforts, right? Employers want to reach out to as many potential customers as possible. There's so many disabled folks out there that having that representation, disability in the workforce, helps you better sell your goods or market whatever you might want to do. So accentuate the positive, kind of like what Amanda was saying earlier. Use it as a positive, as a strength. And so the same thing in terms of wanting to be a more inclusive workforce for folks with disabilities.
The social model of disability takes a burden of accommodations and figuring out how to do jobs off of the person with a disability and onto us. What can we do as a community to ensure our spaces are accessible and usable by all? Researching some of the organizations that are adopting that social model, adopting universal design is probably one of the best things you can do. I mean, I even went on, I'm trying to put a presentation together and find examples for universal design for teachers or universal design for caseworkers. Googling that, you will get lists and lists and lists of options. All the information is out there. Just search for it.
I think there's a number of things employers can do. So there's some organizations, like I know my dad works for Stellantis, and this is not a plug, but they heavily use Microsoft 365. Those of us that are in the disabled community and work with disabled people know that organizations like Microsoft have done and Google have done a really good job in recent years of making disability or disability access embedded into their infrastructure. So being mindful of like when you pick softwares or different platforms that you're using, making sure that accessibility is kind of built into the fabric of that software or program. If you're a remote friendly institution, don't hide that. Put that in your job descriptions or postings because those are things that disabled people really look for. A lot of disabled people, remote work or flexibility with scheduling is a big point of attracting them or making them say like, okay, this place is inclusive because they recognize that not everybody can work 9 to 5 or not everybody can work in a physical office space. So if you're doing things, make sure that that's profiled or stated in job postings or on websites, on press releases, commercials, on whatever you might do for outreach. And then also make sure that everything you're doing speaks to disability. So if you build new buildings, make sure that they're meeting the ADA accessibility requirements for physical spaces and whatnot. Also, asking that question that you mentioned of what do you need to be successful? When you build a culture of inclusion and support, word gets out and people will come.
And especially look at today's job market, there are so many employers looking for people for all kinds of jobs at all levels. And I think if we can just get employers to open their mind with the best candidate for this job just might happen to use a wheelchair. They just might happen to have autism. We're not looking, specifically for someone, but be open that that best candidate might come with something extra, and that's okay. And then you look to other organizations, and there's not a lot of jobs available in the greater Indianapolis area, but there's a company now that's out there that's called Inclusively, and it's like Indeed, but it is for people with disabilities. You can list in your resume, in your profile, what accommodations that you most likely will need on the job. If there is a platform, if you handle Zoom better than you handle Microsoft Teams, you can say that I would like to be interviewed in this platform because maybe their captioning is better. Maybe it just works better for you to flow with that. You can set that up. And these employers have already committed to working with people with disabilities. They've pre-screened by the people at Inclusively. And so they are creating a very safe environment where up front, everyone's cards are on the table, which is kind of nice, fair environment that everyone knows what we're doing. But it gives you that ability to do more. So I think if we ask employers, be an open mind to who that best person to do this job might not look like the 10 people that held this job before. And maybe there's a reason why 10 different people have been through this job in the past 10 years. So maybe we need to look somewhat different. And we will find that the greatest underused talent pool in this country are people with disabilities. So let's tap this untapped pool and invite more people into our building. So if we open our doors and open our minds, I think employers will make a huge difference.
Okay, so this is our last formal question before we want to open it up to the room. What is one final piece of advice or a final thought that you would give to a job seeker with a disability?
Definitely have an advocate, at least one.
So I would say don't limit yourself. 20-some years of working with college students with disabilities, we'd always often ask, well, what do you want to do? Why are you coming to Ball State, or now with our internship program, what do you want to do? And I would often hear the student give a response that you wouldn't need the college degree for as to what the job would be. And so I would say, no, don't limit yourself. If you've grown up wanting to go into STEM, go into STEM. We need more disabled people in STEM. So, I mean, like so many have articulated so nicely up here today, there's no reason why somebody with a disability can't do various different jobs. So don't limit yourself.
Kind of piggybacking off of the advocate piece, for me, one thing that was super helpful is I kind of surrounded it wasn't by choice, I was just by luck and a gift, but I was surrounded by a couple of different faculty and people within my university that represented minoritized populations. And also, as a disabled person, don't think that you only have to talk to disabled people to talk about how you approach a minoritized status in the employment experience. So I've talked to friends that are people of color or people that have LGBTQIA status that have had to talk about like same-sex marriage protections and whatnot in the employment in terms of healthcare and whatnot. Those people have perspectives and experiences because they've navigated some of the same things in different ways. So they know what it's like to maybe, if you're a person of color, maybe you get asked about your race, or if you're a woman, maybe you get asked about, are you planning to be pregnant in the next 6 months? So they experience inappropriate or discriminatory things in the employment situation, and they have stories and resources and experiences. So also be open to a broader community that can support you in different ways.
And I will go back to a frequently used word here, resources again. A lot of people, especially coming out of with a college degree, think I can do this on my own. And not many people do it on their own. We all have our teams that support us. But also, if you have a disability, you can go to vocational rehabilitation. Most often you will qualify for services. You might not be disabled to an extent that you would be required, that you would be able to get services right away. Indiana has a wait list and is on this order of selection, which only people with most significant disabilities get approved, but you would be surprised at what most significant disabilities are. So look for those resources. Maybe a job coach might just need to help you get through that interview process, help you source the right jobs, and once you're into your job, they'll probably never come to your workplace because you can handle your job itself. But there's just someone there to build a relationship with and say, hey, I had a situation come up at work. How would you have handled it? I think I could have done better. I don't know what I could have done. So have people that you trust, whether it's someone who is a job coach, your trusted family member, or a friend, have someone you can bounce those ideas off of, because you probably have some really strong instincts of your own already, but sometimes we just need someone to validate those instincts that we have and say, oh, yeah, you did a great job, or yeah, if this comes up again, why don't you try this instead? So use those resources, use those people.
Sorry, I already said one thing. I'm going to say a second thing based on that. You've got great resources. So Marian students have wonderful resources. The Personalized Learning Center, yes. And I would be very remiss with Jenny here in the audience if I did not recommend, Marian has a wonderful career services office. Great resources there for all students at Marian, including disabled students. So take advantage, use the resources that are available to you.
I feel like some of those things I said on this panel make employment sound scary. It's not. It's only as intimidating as any new part of life is. You got this. It may look different, but that's okay. There is really no definition of normal. So everyone does things differently, but you got this. Find those grounding supports. Find that advocate. Utilize your resources, and you'll figure it out.
Thank you so much. I want to open it up to the audience now to ask questions. I will bring the microphone to you. I would ask that we don't say, I can talk loud enough. Everyone in this room that knows me knows that I really push microphone usage. So if you have a question, please somehow get my attention, and I will bring the microphone to you. Maybe. Okay, I'm going to take it over here to Jeannie.
Well, first of all, thank you. I've been back here taking copious notes to share with the rest of our team that wasn't here, but this was super helpful. I was just thinking, one of you had mentioned something that made me think about job descriptions and how a lot of times there are sometimes language on there, things like must be able to lift 25 pounds, when really, like, I think that probably is standard language on some job descriptions, but really in our job, if somebody couldn't lift that really wouldn't matter. I'm just curious, are there certain things beyond that example that that you often see in like job descriptions that would be helpful for people to kind of give a second look at to think, do we actually need to have that there, that might just kind of slip our minds?
One thing immediately comes to mind, oftentimes must have a valid driver's license. Why? Okay, if it's going to be a truck driver or something like that, delivery driver, fine. But for most positions, why do you need a driver's license? Disabled people who aren't able to drive or who choose not to drive are able to get from point A to point B. There's so many wonderful, Uber, Lyft, etc., public transportation. There are ways that the person with a disability can perform those functions of the job without having a valid driver's license.
Another one is sit or stand for long periods of time. And for some people, they need to, as Paige has mentioned, move their body or adjust their body throughout the day. And unless you're going to work on an assembly line, changing position is not normally a big factor. So I've seen a couple corporate jobs where those say like sit or stand for long periods of time. So that's not really an accurate essential function, but I feel like I still see it occasionally.
I'm going to segue from job descriptions into interviews, because this is something that I want to mention that I forgot. But for neurodiverse individuals, the common interview style that we see often doesn't work. When you're like, tell me about yourself, you're not really opening the conversation for me to share everything about myself. You want to know, like, okay, here's something kind of fun, but here's my work history and here's why I'm interested in this job. Breaking down those questions into what you're actually asking for is immensely helpful. And again, there's examples on there.
What other questions do we have? Okay, well, I have actually asked Ginny to come up to the front as well for a minute and talk about what resources students can utilize while they're students here at Marian and how the exchange can support them.
Well, like I said, thank you so much to all of you for being here, because everything you shared, it was great learning for, I'm sure everybody here, certainly for me. And thank you for all of you being here and being interested in this topic. Like Larry said, I feel super fortunate that we have the Personalized Learning Center, because prior to having that, we'd have students who would be coming to us sometimes, and if they felt comfortable disclosing a disability, then we could be a little bit more helpful, but not everybody does. So it's really nice to have a resource that's here and really just open for students. But knowing opportunities like the one at the Fairbox Center, that's been a resource that a lot of our students have taken advantage of. I know that Mandy, I don't know that the workforce readiness program came up today, but there are just a lot of opportunities like that for students that we're able to refer to PLC and to partner with. One thing that I did want to mention, and I realized that I'm showing my laptop, like this is just a great presentation tool for all of you way back there from this little screen. But I just wanted to mention, and Mandy said that she would share out this link with the video. This is very much kudos to Lil Dwayner-Letts in our office, but just so everyone knows, if you go to marian.edu/exchange, one of the links that's on the side is for diversity resources. And if you click on it, it breaks it down by on-campus resources that we have, which include things like the Counseling and Consultative Services Office, the Personalized Learning Center, the Exchange. There are opportunities on there for off-campus resources, which include many of what you spoke about today. And there's even a link for things like disclosing, so that if students are trying to figure out, and it just echoes what you shared, that basically there's no right or wrong time to disclose. It's very much a personal decision, but here are some things to think about where you might disclose prior to or at the very beginning of the application process, all the way through after you've been offered the job, and kind of the things to think through with that. I'm grateful grateful to, again, resources like PLC and for having that information accessible to me, because I don't pretend like I just know all of this off the top of my head, but just wanted you all to know that that's a resource too, that you can certainly refer students to either office, but also just know at your fingertips, you could go to our website, search for that information, and that is provides a lot of really helpful links to resources that are there. And if anybody notices resources that we don't have, we'd be happy to include them. Brady, Lil, is there anything that I'm missing that would be good to add?
I don't know how familiar students are with Lime Connect. But they do have a lot of scholarships and a lot of national internships available as well. I believe that's a link on there. I share a lot of those online, on LinkedIn with and for students as well, so that is just another resource as well.
Well, thank you everyone again for coming. First, I would like to thank our panelists. We could not do this without you. I appreciate your collective knowledge. We share a lot of information, myself and Dr. Bell and Hannah and others in our office, but being able to talk with those that are out in the workforce is a little bit different than it is in the higher ed environment, so we appreciate your time today. The only other thing that I want to mention is just some of our upcoming events. So Tuesday, the 18th of April, so next week, from 11 to 1 in Dining Commons, we'll be having a Make Your Own Slime event. Students have been told that multiple times, but also if you as faculty, staff, if you have anyone else that want to come do it, it's a fun time for all. Hannah has perfected the recipe for slime. Also, Thursday, April 27th, we are going to have our Neurodiversity Celebration Day/night, which will be right here in the private dining room. From 2 to 3 p.m., we will be showing the documentary Autism Goes to College, followed by a discussion from 3:15 to 4:15. And then from 4:30 until we close it down for the night, we're going to be celebrating, and we're going to have another slime making event. We're going to have food, puzzles, games, a networking event, as well as a call out for our brand new Neurodiversity Council. So thank you again all for attending. This will be available on our website, and I will be sure to send it out. It will be a couple days because we want to ensure that it's accessible so that we have captions and everything on it before we post it. But thank you again, everyone, for attending, and thank you to our panelists.